You know, this maritime law associations and their memberships, right? And then the judges. I just wanted to know how many of them can know about any crime. Now, I emailed the civil rights of the Coast Guard. Yeah. How are they today? The official website for the United States Coast Guard, the service providers. Yeah. I emailed all of them. Got one of those copies of the Civil Rights Manual for those that are in the Coast Guard. You know, I'm documenting that my sons have certain rights that have not been enforced. Yes. They have the right to speak to me. Poop. And you have to remove the fraud of the protection order. Yes. And the dissolution of marriage. Now, for all of those in the Coast Guard that say, well, I'm not in the Coast Guard. Yeah, you're going to have to remove your fraudulent mental health evaluations. They are not going to spend the rest of their lives explaining why they have a mental illness or disease. Yes, because of your fraud of having me arrested. Poop. Now, as their father, I want the rights of children enforced. Yes, known as the Child Victims Bill of Rights. Yes. Now, Coast Guard. Poop. If you read the rest of this, I do a pretty good job documenting this rights of child victims and the witnesses. Yes. When you don't give me actual notice of court hearings, right? You don't give me a dissolution of marriage right now. Um, the Coast Guard, yes. They're within the Department of Homeland Security, yes. I think that their manual, yes, is inclusive of having knowledge of any American citizen's rights being violated. Poop. Now, this individual known as Thad, yes, you're the Commandant of the United States Coast Guard. You know, I've had a problem with a guy named Cap, that little midget that's bald right now. And I thought that when I told you, yes, well, Homeland Security goes the way of the dinosaur, so do you. Pooh! You know, I was talking to the military earlier today, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. Yes. It seems that National Guards of states will not enforce civil rights. Yes. And then the public relation boards will not investigate any corruption in police departments. Yes. And my thought is, well, you used to be under the Navy and this natural disaster known as an emergency. Poop. Maybe you need to go back underneath the Navy instead of Homeland Security. See, it's the Coast Guard Civil Rights Manual of the United States Coast Guard. Now, we could just call you the Navy and we could get rid of them. See, in 2003, Homeland Security decided that they were going to be the nation's law enforcement, and they were going to look underneath every rock and bush for all the terrorists. Yes, but they would refuse to enforce the actual laws of the United States. Now, Commandant Instruction M5350.4C. Yes. The purpose of the manual provides policy and guidance for Coast Guard military equal opportunity and civilian equal employment opportunity programs. Now, I know I'm not an employee of the Coast Guard. Yes. But the Commandant's Equal Opportunity and Sexual Harassment Policy, the Coast Guard Partnership in Education, yes. The Anti-Harassment and Hate Incident Procedures, I mentioned malicious harassment. Seattle Police Department. I mentioned the hate crimes of false police reports, false arrests, false imprisonment, yes, and then the torture, the pain, and the suffering, yes, of fraud, deception, and negligence. Now, for those in the Coast Guard that do have the Civil Rights Program checklist, yes, it does. Exactly how many laws of the United States do you have to violate before the Coast Guard decides to arrest for felonies? Because I don't see a real reason to have you. I know for every drowning individual out there, and why don't you give me the total number every year? See, we have 350 million American citizens, and if we lose a few thousand at sea every fucking year,